My boyfriend expected me to pay for his entire Vegas birthday trip, so I sent him and his 10 friends there on one-way tickets instead. My name is Claire Bennett, and I was 32 when my boyfriend asked me to spend more than $20,000 to prove I loved him. At the time, Ethan Cole and I had been together for almost 2 years. From the outside, we looked like a happy, stable couple. We shared an apartment, split everyday expenses, and had settled into the comfortable routines couples build over time. Ethan was 29, charming, confident, and the kind of man who could win over an entire room within minutes. When we first met, I found that confidence irresistible. Being with him made me feel chosen, as though I'd won something everyone else wanted. Eventually, though, I realized his affection always came with conditions. Whenever I agreed with him, helped him, or solved one of his problems, he became thoughtful and attentive. But the moment I refused him, everything changed. He never raised his voice or started an argument. Instead, he acted quietly disappointed, making even the most reasonable boundary feel like a personal betrayal. For a long time, I convinced myself every relationship had flaws. It was easier to explain away those moments than admit they were becoming a pattern. Love does not always make people blind. Sometimes love simply teaches you how to explain away the things you already know are wrong. As Ethan's 30th birthday approached, he and his college friends became obsessed with planning a weekend in Las Vegas. Every few days, he'd excitedly mention luxury restaurants, exclusive clubs, or a suite at the Wynn, and I assumed they were simply comparing ideas within their budget. One Tuesday evening, he asked me to sit beside him on the couch, wearing the careful expression he always used before asking for something. "Babe," he said, "we finally decided on my birthday." "We? The guys and me. What did you decide?" "Vegas." He handed me his phone. The screen displayed a luxury suite at the Wynn, complete with a marble bathroom, private bar, and a price high enough to make me pause. "The guys want to do it properly," he said. "Nice dinners, bottle service, the whole experience." "Have you booked it?" He smiled and rested a hand on my knee. "Not yet. That's what I wanted to talk to you about." Then he reminded me about my promotion, my bonus, and something I'd once said about experiences being better gifts than expensive things. "So," he said casually, "the guys and I thought this could be your birthday gift to me." I frowned. "The trip, the flights and the hotel. For you?" "For all of us." I already knew the answer, but I asked anyway. 11 people. He laughed awkwardly. "The guys will handle most of the food and drinks. You just cover the flights and the hotel." I looked back at the suite price. "So you're asking me to pay for 11 flights and a luxury hotel in Las Vegas?" "It's my 30th birthday, Claire." "I'm aware. You only turn 30 once. And you only turn every age once." His smile faded. "I thought you'd want to do something special for me." There it was. Not a request, but another loyalty test. If I agreed, I loved him. If I refused, I was selfish. Keeping my voice calm, I asked, "Did you already tell your friends I'd pay?" He hesitated. "We talked about the possibility." "That wasn't my question." "They know you're generous." I could already picture 10 grown men planning a luxury vacation around money they expected me to provide. Worse, Ethan had let them believe I'd already agreed. It wasn't the first time he'd volunteered my generosity. The year before, he'd quietly charged an expensive watch to my credit card, and when we rented our apartment, I later discovered he'd hidden unpaid leases behind vague excuses. Every time he apologized convincingly, and every time I accepted it because admitting the truth meant admitting the pattern. Now, sitting across from him, that pattern was impossible to ignore. Sitting on that couch, I finally saw the pattern for what it was. Ethan wasn't asking me to celebrate his birthday. He was measuring how much access he still had to my money. I could have argued, but anger rarely changes people. It only warns them. So instead, I smiled, handed his phone back and said, "That's a big gift, but you're right. You only turn 30 once." His entire face lit up. "So you'll do it?" "I'll handle the flights and accommodations." He hugged me immediately, thanking me before asking for everyone's full legal names and birth dates so I could make the reservations. Minutes later, he was proudly telling the group chat that his generous girlfriend was making Vegas happen. That night, after he went to bed, convinced he'd won, I stayed up building my own plan. I searched for the cheapest one-way flights, budget motels, and every cancellation policy I could find. By 2 a.m, the spreadsheet was finished. 11 passengers, 3 motel rooms, 6 beds, no return tickets. Ethan wanted an unforgettable birthday. I intended to give him one, just not the version he expected. The following week passed as though nothing had happened. Ethan was cheerful, constantly talking about Vegas, while his friends planned expensive dinners and parties without once asking what the trip actually cost or offering to pay. He happily told everyone I was treating him to the weekend, and people kept congratulating him for finding such a generous girlfriend. By then, everything had already been booked. I bought 11 one-way economy tickets with the cheapest fare available, one that charged extra for luggage, seat selection, and almost everything beyond the seat itself. Instead of the Wynn, I reserved 3 budget motel rooms under different names. giving 6 men legitimate reservations while leaving the other 5 to figure out their own accommodations. I paid exactly what I'd promised, flights and accommodations, but nothing more. On Wednesday night, Ethan packed as if he were headed for a luxury resort, asking whether he should bring one blazer or 2. Take both, I said. He had no idea the airline would charge him for the extra bag. While he showered, I emailed everyone their confirmations. Subject, Vegas, gentlemen. Your flights are confirmed. Please travel light as your fare doesn't include checked bags or large carry-ons. Hotel confirmations have been sent separately. Have a memorable weekend. I scheduled the email for 10 o'clock. 15 minutes later, Ethan's phone began vibrating non-stop. The shower shut off, and he walked out wrapped in a towel, staring at his screen. Claire, what is this? The tickets. They're one way. Yes. Why? Because return flights cost more than I was willing to spend. He stared at me in stunned silence, struggling to process what I just said. You said you were handling the trip. I did. You booked Spirit. They had the best fare. And we have to pay for luggage? I mentioned that in the email. Before he could say anything else, his phone exploded with notifications. Marcus. Why does my reservation say Motel 6? Dylan. Mine says Super 8. Is this the wrong hotel? Ethan stared at me. Where's the win confirmation? There isn't one. The calls started immediately. Marcus demanded to know why he was sharing a budget motel room and where everyone else was staying. Ethan looked at me, waiting for an explanation. There are 3 rooms, I said calmly. For 11 people. 4 6. The others can arrange their own accommodations. His face drained of colour. They have nowhere to stay. They're adults. They can book rooms themselves. Another text arrived. I didn't get a reservation. Where am I sleeping? A second followed. Is this Travelodge anywhere near the Wynn? I checked the map. About 25 minutes away. Ethan ran a hand through his wet hair. You split us across 3 motels? I booked accommodations exactly as I promised. You only booked 6 beds. The rest can pay for their own. They can't afford that. The words escaped before he realized what he'd admitted. That was the truth. 11 grown men had planned a luxury vacation they couldn't afford because they expected me to fund it. You need to fix this, he snapped. No, I thought you promised me a birthday trip. I promised flights and accommodations. I never promised luxury. You knew what I meant. I knew what you expected. He stared at me as though I'd become someone else. Maybe I had. For 2 years, he'd known the version of me who apologized before saying no. That woman was gone. My friends think I lied, he said. Did you? I told them you were paying. You let them believe I was buying the Win without ever asking me. You said yes. Yes isn't a blank check. His phone continued buzzing as the group chat dissolved into panic. Some refused to go unless the hotel changed. Others complained about baggage fees, and everyone wanted Ethan to fix the mess. He started typing a reply. Claire messed up the bookings. She's fixing it. Before he could send it, I said quietly, No, I'm not. He deleted the message and turned back to me. The warmth in his face had disappeared, replaced by calculation. How much money do you have right now? For what? To book the Win. We never agreed to the Win. Then transfer me the money. I couldn't help laughing. You think this is funny? No, I said. I think it's revealing. Without another word, he grabbed his suitcase and disappeared into the bedroom. For the next hour, Ethan called his friends one by one, inventing different excuses. He blamed booking errors, website problems, and misunderstandings, promising everyone he'd fix everything after they landed. By midnight, 3 of them wanted to cancel, but Ethan convinced them to go by assuring them I'd transfer the money the next morning, without ever asking whether I actually would. His alarm rang at 4:30. He got dressed in silence, then paused at the door. You're going to regret this. I met his eyes. Read your ticket before you get to the airport. He left without another word. An hour later, the messages started. They charged me $99 for my suitcase. What kind of girlfriend does this on someone's birthday? Ethan called repeatedly, but I ignored every call. Just before boarding, he sent one final message. You have 2 hours to book us proper rooms before we land. I turned my phone over and made coffee. The trip unraveled almost immediately after they landed. Baggage fees had already cost them hundreds of dollars, and things only got worse when they reached the motels. The 6 men with reservations refused to squeeze the others into their rooms after the front desk warned them about occupancy limits. 2 men bought flights home, another borrowed money for a hotel, and before long the group had turned on itself. Marcus blamed Ethan, Ethan blamed me, and everyone else demanded someone else pay. By mid-afternoon, Ethan sent one last desperate message. We have no rooms together, no dinner reservations, and no return flights. Send me $5,000. I replied with a single sentence. I already paid for the birthday trip you demanded. His answer came almost instantly. I hate you. I silenced my phone and walked into the apartment Ethan had left behind. While photographing the mess for my records, I noticed my tablet and noise-cancelling headphones were gone. Then I opened our shared banking account and discovered something even worse. Ethan had quietly stopped paying his share of the utilities weeks earlier, while still expecting me to finance his luxury vacation. In that moment, the Vegas trip stopped feeling like revenge. It became evidence. The next morning, while Ethan and his friends were still falling apart in Las Vegas, I opened my laptop and began organizing everything. Bank statements, utility records, lease documents, receipts, and screenshots of our messages. Every file was labeled, backed up, and stored in the cloud. I finally felt completely calm. I wasn't preparing for another argument anymore. I was gathering proof. That morning, I called our landlord, Richard Hayes, and explained that Ethan and I were separating. Since both of us were on the lease, I wanted to know exactly what I could and couldn't do. Richard confirmed that I couldn't change the locks or remove Ethan's belongings while he remained a legal tenant. The cleanest solution, he explained, was a written move-out agreement signed by both of us. Before ending the call, he offered one final piece of advice. Document everything. I already have. I thought you would. Knowing the legal boundaries gave me something I'd been missing for weeks. Certainty. I immediately emailed Ethan, explaining that our relationship was over and that any discussion about the apartment would happen in writing. If he chose to move out voluntarily, I'd work with the landlord to complete the paperwork. The email contained no accusations or emotion, only facts. Then I drove to the police station to report my missing tablet and headphones. I couldn't prove Ethan had taken them, so I simply reported the items as missing, provided the receipts and serial numbers, and accepted the case number. Another record. Another paper trail. When I returned to my car, my phone showed more than 30 unread messages, almost all from Ethan. They began with demands for me to answer, then quickly turned into complaints about furious friends, ruined plans, and mounting chaos in Las Vegas. I replied with a single question. Have you read my email? His answer came immediately. Forget the email, send money. I locked my phone. A few minutes later, Marcus called, furious that I'd ruined the trip. I bought exactly what Ethan asked me to buy, I replied. He promised us luxury. I never did. When he accused me of destroying Ethan's birthday over money, I answered calmly. No, I stopped pretending it was my responsibility to finance 11 grown men. He hung up and I never heard from him again. By that afternoon, social media was already full of photos from the trip, but instead of luxury restaurants and rooftop bars, they showed arguments outside budget motels, convenience store meals, and Ethan pacing in frustration while shouting into his phone. His perfect birthday weekend was falling apart in public. Around 4 o'clock, Ethan finally called again. We're stranded, he said. Nobody wants to stay together anymore. Ryan flew home, Dylan borrowed money, Marcus isn't speaking to me. Please send us the money. No, I'll pay you back. You still haven't paid your share of the utilities. Silence filled the line. I checked our account yesterday, I continued. 3 utility payments disappeared while you were asking me to finance your birthday. His voice dropped. I was going to fix it. You remembered Las Vegas. You forgot your bills. For the first time since the trip began, Ethan had no answer. After a long silence, he finally asked, You checked the account? Yes. You weren't supposed to. The words stopped me, not because of what they revealed, but because of how naturally he said them, as if keeping me in the dark had always been part of our relationship. I wasn't supposed to. I needed time. To do what? To fix things. Instead of explaining, he tried to minimize everything. Please don't end this over one mistake. One mistake. That's what he called the Vegas demand, the unpaid bills, the missing electronics, and years of quietly taking advantage of me. We'll talk when you get back, I said. After another pause, he asked, almost cautiously, So, you're letting me come home? You still legally live here. He sounded relieved, not because he thought we still had a future, but because he believed he still had control. That illusion lasted only a few more hours. That evening, Ryan sent me a message. Claire, I think you should see this. Attached were screenshots from the men's group chat weeks before Ethan had ever asked me about Vegas. The first read, Think she'll actually pay? Ethan answered, She always does. The next messages were worse. Claire hates saying no, just make it sound romantic. Once she agrees to the hotel, she'll probably cover dinner too. She's doing really well financially, might as well enjoy it. Then came the one that erased every remaining doubt. Relax, I know exactly how to handle her. I stared at the screen in silence. For weeks I'd wondered whether I'd overreacted. Those screenshots answered every question. The birthday wasn't the manipulation, it was the payoff. The manipulation had started long before Ethan ever sat me down on the couch. Ryan followed with one final message. I didn't know he talked about you like that. I'm sorry. I thanked him, then backed up every screenshot in multiple places. Evidence doesn't erase heartbreak, but it does make it impossible to lie to yourself about what really happened. Rebecca asked whether Ryan would be willing to verify the screenshots if Ethan disputed them. He agreed. He never had to. During the hearing, Ethan admitted the messages were authentic. Later that night, another email arrived. This one wasn't from Ethan. It was from Richard, our landlord. Richard later told me Ethan had called the building demanding he make Claire stop playing games. Richard's reply was simple. Our relationship was ending, I hadn't violated the lease, and if Ethan wanted to discuss moving out, all communication would happen in writing after he returned. That was exactly what I wanted. Facts, not drama. By the time Ethan came home 6 days later, I already knew how Vegas had ended. Ryan and 2 others had described the chaos. Arguments started at the airport, half the group had nowhere to stay, friendships collapsed over the motel reservations, and the luxury weekend Ethan had promised never happened. But what truly destroyed the group wasn't the trip, it was Ryan's screenshots proving Ethan had planned to pressure me into paying all along. The following afternoon, Richard called to say Ethan wanted to collect his belongings. I'll be there if you'd like a witness, he offered. I gladly accepted. At 1 o'clock Saturday, Ethan stepped out of the elevator carrying a duffel bag. He looked exhausted, and the confidence that had always surrounded him was gone. You look good, he said with a careful smile. So do you. Neither of us believed it. Richard stayed near the door, giving us a witness without interfering. Can we talk privately? Ethan asked. No, we can talk here. He sighed. You humiliated me. I paid for exactly what I agreed to. You knew everyone expected the win. I knew what you expected. My friends don't trust me anymore. They stopped trusting you after they saw how you talked about me. His expression changed immediately. Ryan sent you the screenshots. Yes, they were jokes. Were they? He had no answer. Instead, he insisted he'd apologized. You asked for money, I corrected. The apology came afterward. When he denied manipulating me, I placed a folder on the kitchen counter. Inside were the screenshots, bank records, unpaid utility bills, our emails, and the police report for my missing electronics, all organized in chronological order. You printed all this. I wanted one version of reality. He stared at the evidence before quietly saying, I made mistakes. No, you made choices. I slid one screenshot toward him. Relax. I know exactly how to handle her. I shouldn't have written that, he admitted. You shouldn't have believed it. Silence settled between us. Finally, he asked, Can I get my clothes? They're where you left them. You have 1 hour. While Richard noted the time, Ethan went into the bedroom. A few minutes later, he returned carrying not only clothes, but my gaming console, speakers, kitchen appliances, and even the coffee maker. Those stay, I said. We bought them together. I opened another folder and handed him the receipts. Every major purchase had been made with my card. Without another argument, he quietly carried each item back. When he reached for the television remote, I raised an eyebrow. He set it down immediately. About 40 minutes into the visit, Ethan walked into the kitchen holding a small black notebook. I need this. I recognized it immediately. It was my old password notebook. It stays here. It's just a notebook. It belongs to me. After a brief hesitation, he handed it over. As I flipped through it, I noticed several pages had clearly been photographed. Did you copy these passwords? Just in case. In case of what? You'd already started changing them, so you copied the old ones anyway. He couldn't answer. I locked the notebook in my desk drawer, while Richard silently noted what had happened. When the hour was over, Ethan packed his bag. Before he left, I placed one final document on the table. A voluntary move-out agreement. He read it carefully. If I sign this, I give up the apartment. You'll schedule any remaining visits to collect your belongings. After that, you'll no longer be a tenant. Richard confirmed everything. After another long silence, Ethan looked at me. You planned all this? I prepared for every outcome. He let out a tired laugh. I always thought you avoided conflict. I avoided unnecessary conflict. His expression softened. If I sign, is there any chance we fix this? For the first time since Vegas, the question sounded genuine. I answered just as honestly. Our relationship ended the day I realized you loved what I could provide more than who I was. He lowered his eyes, signed the agreement without another word, and Richard witnessed it. At the door, Ethan stopped one last time. I never cheated on you. I know. I never stopped loving you. I thought about the screenshots, the unpaid bills, the copied passwords, and the birthday demand. I don't think we ever meant the same thing when we said love. He nodded quietly and walked away. I expected relief. Instead, I felt exhausted. Ending a relationship built on years of quiet manipulation takes far more energy than ending one destroyed by a single betrayal. 3 days later, Ethan ignored the agreed process and showed up with Marcus, hoping the concierge would let them upstairs without notice. Instead, they were refused entry, the building manager was called, and security cameras recorded the entire exchange. That evening, my attorney finished reviewing my documentation. Her final advice was only one sentence. From this point forward, communicate only in writing. You're no longer ending a relationship. You're preserving evidence. I created one final folder on my computer. Final chapter. From that point on, there were no more dramatic arguments. Everything became emails, receipts, scheduled appointments, and written records. The relationship that had once depended on trust had been reduced to paperwork, and somehow that made the ending feel undeniable. A week after Ethan signed the agreement, I emailed him 2 available evenings to collect the rest of his belongings. He never replied. Instead, he showed up unannounced with Marcus, expecting the concierge to let them upstairs anyway. The building manager refused, reminding them that Ethan had signed a move-out agreement requiring all visits to be scheduled in advance. After 15 minutes of arguing, they left empty-handed, and security sent me the lobby footage for my records. A few days later, Ethan finally emailed me, not to schedule a visit. He sent a 10-page document titled My Property. The first items made sense: his clothes, shoes, and gym equipment. Then the list became ridiculous. He claimed my coffee grinder, cookware, office chair, half the furniture, even paintings my mother had given me years before we met. On the last page, he demanded that I pack everything and deliver it to his parents' apartment. I replied the same afternoon. Anything that clearly belonged to him remained available for collection by appointment. Anything I had purchased or received as a personal gift was not negotiable. If he believed ownership was genuinely disputed, he was free to resolve it through the proper legal process. I would not pack, transport, or deliver anything. Instead of answering, he had a lawyer send me a demand letter accusing me of withholding his property. I forwarded it to my attorney, Rebecca Shaw. After confirming I had kept every email, receipt, visitor record, and the signed move-out agreement, she simply said, "Perfect, we'll answer with documents." The next morning, she sent Ethan's attorney the agreement, every unanswered scheduling email, and building records showing Ethan had ignored the agreed procedure twice. Over the next 2 days, the attorneys exchanged several emails clarifying the move-out agreement and the visitor records. Every record told the same story. Ethan had been offered multiple opportunities to collect his belongings, but had ignored the agreed procedure. By the 3rd day, the demand disappeared. His attorney requested exactly what I'd offered from the beginning, a scheduled appointment. The following Tuesday, Ethan arrived alone and on time. Richard stayed nearby as a neutral witness while Ethan packed quietly. Most conversations lasted only a few words. Mine? Yes. No, I have the receipt. There were no arguments, only facts. Near the end, Ethan stopped at an old photograph from our first vacation together. "Were we really that happy?" he asked. I think we believed we were. After a long silence, he admitted quietly, "I did love you." "I know." "When did you stop loving me?" "It wasn't one moment," I said. "It happened every time you expected instead of appreciated. Every time you volunteered my money without asking. Every time paying your share felt optional while my support became automatic." He lowered his eyes. "And Vegas?" "Vegas didn't end the relationship. It showed me what it had already become." For the first time since we'd met, Ethan didn't argue. He simply nodded. "I really thought you'd keep saying yes forever." "I know," I said. "And that's exactly why I finally stopped." Before leaving, Ethan signed an inventory confirming everything he collected. After the deadline for his remaining belongings expired, I photographed everything that was left, moved it into a storage unit, and emailed him the contract, unit number, and access instructions. He never replied. With the property issue finished, Rebecca and I focused on the financial losses: unpaid utilities, professional cleaning, replacement of my missing tablet and headphones, moving costs, and storage fees. Every expense was supported by receipts, totaling just over $2,300. When Rebecca reviewed the file, she asked, "Do you want to claim emotional damages?" "No." "Or anything connected to Vegas?" "No." She smiled. "Good. Courts prefer evidence over emotion." We filed the claim with a complete paper trail: lease, move-out agreement, bank records, receipts, emails, photographs, the police report, and one final exhibit: Marcus's social media post before the trip. "Vegas this weekend. Ethan's amazing girlfriend is spoiling all of us." Rebecca pointed at it. "That proves Ethan publicly told everyone you were paying." A week after the filing, Ethan called, not to discuss the case. He wanted to meet for coffee. For a moment, I almost agreed. Not because I wanted him back, but because I wanted to believe 2 years deserved one honest conversation. Then Ryan sent me a screenshot. Ethan's dating profile had already been active for nearly 2 weeks, looking for someone who knows how to enjoy life and isn't afraid of grand romantic gestures. I stared at it for a moment before replying to Ethan. "Please communicate through email regarding the pending case." He never called again. 3 months later, our small claims hearing arrived. By then, the apartment had become mine again. Ethan's clothes were gone, the spare bedroom had become my office, and for the first time in a long while, the place felt peaceful. The courtroom was nothing like television. No dramatic speeches or surprise witnesses, just a judge, a clerk, and 2 former partners sitting across from each other. The judge confirmed that I wasn't seeking reimbursement for the Las Vegas trip. "You bought those tickets voluntarily?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And you're only requesting repayment for verifiable financial obligations?" "Yes." "Good." That was exactly what Rebecca had expected. The case wasn't about heartbreak. It was about accountability. One by one, we reviewed the lease, the signed move-out agreement, unpaid utility records, cleaning invoices, moving and storage costs, replacement receipts, photographs, and bank statements. Every record matched the timeline, and every expense could be verified. Ethan acknowledged signing the agreement voluntarily, leaving the facts to speak for themselves. When the judge reached the group chat screenshots, he looked at me. These aren't the basis of your financial claim. No, Your Honor. They explain how the dispute began. He turned to Ethan. Are these messages authentic? They were jokes, Ethan said. Are they authentic? After a pause, he nodded. Yes. The judge made another note and moved on. The missing tablet wasn't treated as theft because it had never been recovered, but the replacement cost was supported by receipts, so it remained part of the supported expenses. Rebecca quietly leaned toward me. That's all we needed. Once he admitted the messages were authentic, there was no dispute about where the screenshots had come from. Then Ethan tried one final argument. She planned all of this to embarrass me. The judge looked at him calmly. Did Ms. Bennett ask you to finance 11 people? No. Did she promise your friends a luxury suite? No. Were you free not to board the flight? Yes. Then Las Vegas isn't what we're deciding today. The judge remained silent for a moment before asking another question. Mr. Cole, are you disputing any of the receipts submitted by Ms. Bennett? No. The utility statements? No. The storage invoices? No. The signed move-out agreement? No. The judge nodded. Then the remaining issue before this court is whether those documented expenses should be reimbursed, not whether your birthday trip met anyone's expectations. This hearing wasn't about pride. It was about accountability. Neither attorney interrupted. The only sounds in the courtroom were the turning of pages and the clerk typing notes. When he finally closed the folder, he looked at both of us before announcing his decision. After several more minutes of reviewing the exhibits, the judge confirmed that Ethan had been given every opportunity to collect his remaining property and had chosen not to. A few minutes later, judgment was entered largely in my favor. The court awarded reimbursement for the unpaid utilities, cleaning, moving, storage, and replacement costs, reducing only a few minor claims where the documentation was incomplete. That was enough. I didn't care about a perfect victory anymore. I only wanted the paperwork finished, so neither of us had any reason to keep returning to each other's lives. Outside the courthouse, Ethan called my name. There were no lawyers or witnesses between us anymore. I wasn't expecting this, he admitted. The judgment? No, you. He hesitated before saying something I'd never expected to hear. You didn't ruin my life. You just stopped protecting me. He was right. For years, I'd quietly paid forgotten bills, smoothed over awkward situations, and rescued him from the consequences of his own decisions. I hadn't destroyed his reputation. I'd simply stopped carrying it. I lost almost everyone, he said. My friends, even my parents. Then he added quietly, I started therapy. This time it didn't sound like manipulation. I'm glad, I said. After a long silence, he asked, do you think you'll ever forgive me? I already have. His expression softened. You have? Forgiveness isn't the same as trust. He nodded slowly. I don't think I'll ever earn that back. No. The answer wasn't cruel. It was simply true. As he turned to leave, he stopped one last time. I used to think love meant someone would always rescue me. I smiled faintly. And I used to think love meant rescuing someone. We shared one final look before he walked away. I never saw him again. Over the following weeks, the court-ordered payments arrived exactly as scheduled. I replaced what I'd lost, saved the rest, and slowly rebuilt a life that no longer revolved around fixing someone else's mistakes. One winter morning, I found the framed photo from our first vacation together. I looked at it for a long time before placing it in a memory box and sliding it into the closet. Not because I hated that chapter, but because it belonged to someone I no longer was. People sometimes ask whether I regret buying those one-way tickets to Las Vegas. I don't. Looking back, those tickets cost far less than staying in a relationship where my love was measured by how much I was willing to pay. Nothing important changed in Las Vegas. The only thing that changed was me. I finally stopped pretending everything was fine.